Welcome to those who are attending our Let's Talk Travel series session today. Future Proof Your OTA, Don't Get Left Behind session. For those who are watching on demand or pre-recorded, do feel free to send through some questions to the team. If you know someone already in the business as well, they'll forward it across to myself. But yeah, today's session is all about how we can future-proof your online travel agency and not be left behind. The reason why I put this Let's Talk Travel series session together is because we're speaking with so many OTAs at the minute who are all kind of suffering similar problems and pains, and we kind of really want to just tell you when the right time is, or gives a bit of guidance on what to look for, the way that you can assess the current manual process and really transform that revenue stream. To make you more profitable as a business, but also to kind of be able to reallocate resources at the right time. The only sales pitch that you would be getting from me today, Traverse Automation. I've been automating in travel for over 17 years. We help businesses streamline mid to back office tasks, and we are known for being automation, data and AI specialists within the industry. But let's talk about the struggles first of all. OTAs using manual processes. Ultimately, OTAs were created to remove that kind of manual process in the early stages and get people, buying travel arrangements without having to hire lots of human agents to do all the sales at the start. But there are still so many manual processes which are really kind of time consuming. A lot of human errors are still occurring, even though that you might have a lot of the front end automation already lined up. Inconsistent updates, lack of real-time information seems to be a very big one. Increased operational costs when it comes to customer services and amendments areas of the business, and it's really difficult in managing multiple channels and multiple systems that you may use, and making sure they're kind of fully integrated and aligned. So these are just some of the manual pains, but the real kind of really need, and the reason why it's kind of really critical at the moment is because in travel in particular, you need to have more effectiveness, competitiveness and sustainability within your business to really grow, and automation is the biggest impact now that can make that difference. If you're finding yourself that every time your sales increase by 10-20% and you're bringing in an extra X number of heads, it's a real sign that your business is probably lacking that ability to grow. So I want to go through firstly where to start. Okay, so if you're sat in that position and you're like, well, where the hell should I start? Review each area of your operational operation in your business, and list the manual processes pre, during, and post booking. So where is a lot of my manual processes being taken up? Is it price loading, contract loading? Is it struggling with supplier integrations directly into your website? If it's during, is it making sure you have the quality checks there to avoid then checks that happen post booking? Is it a case of that post booking there's lots of documentation that you need to automate out to people? List all of those manual processes where a human is currently running through and essentially doing the process very repetitively, very boring. You've got high turnover of staff. And then once you have a list of those processes, then put them in priority order, and then start to build flow diagrams of that manual process and look at ways that perhaps you can make changes yourself to that process. Ask yourself, is it rule based? In other words, does it take a human to make an actual decision based on the data that's in front of them, or that documentation, or whatever is in front of them? Does it require a human decision at that point? Even with human decisions, you can still automate those processes. We can create, companies like ours and internal teams can create robotic decisions exactly the same way a human would. Break down the human resource costs, the time spent, and the current error percentage of that manual process, and then you'll start to see a pattern forming. You'll start to really see, okay, I know this is a manual process that could be automated. It's worth looking into. We're spending a lot of money, spending a lot of time, and error rates are high. That's when you kind of know where you need to prioritize and where you need to push your internal efforts into making your kind of processes more automatic for the future. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a manual pain within OTAs. One of those being a stop sales automation. So the usual manual process is a stop sale request, and this might not be relevant to you, but might be relatable with other processes. But a lot of OTAs still live out the inbox. So stop sales requests come into an inbox or documentation where your team would then have to look through that email inbox daily, download the PDFs or the attachments, look at the emails, access the database, and then action that stop sale manually within the system. There is an automatic example here, so the use of RPA and AI can extract that data and the details coming in from the inbox, scrape that information, compare that against what's in the system, or search for that supplier, and even go one step further. So when we found that supplier within the system, it will do exactly what a human would, cross-reference contracts, have a set of rules based on that particular supplier, and then make an actual judgment call as to whether they can action that stop sale at all. If we can't action that stop sale or that particular action within that system, we can raise that in a dashboard report where your team only focus on the ones that actually need a human touch. It needs that human view, human decision to then either go back to the supplier or action something manually based on its current error. Now, the good thing about this process is that you've got less humans who are sat there watching an inbox. I mean, that sounds like the most boring job in the world, and no offense to those who are doing it, but I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that those individuals who are doing tasks like this that are manual and repetitive can be reallocated to more pressing areas of the business. They can be doing more things that allow the company to grow more effectively, taking advantage of that that growth pattern in the business, and not have to hire high volumes of individuals to process it. Now, I always, when a company comes to us, we always push some form of business case to demonstrate the value. Now, if you want to do this internally and you have an internal team and you're really working out whether this thing could be automated and save us lots of money and help us reduce resource and help us stop in that chain reaction of high volume hire, first of all, I'd work out, use stop sales as an example, work out that current volume of stop sales coming into that inbox that need to be manually processed. Once you've worked out the volume that's coming into your process, work out how many one full-time person can handle per month, per year. Once you've clarified how many they can handle per month, per year, you then need to clarify, okay, based on our overall volumes, how many full-time agents do I actually need to complete the task manually for the entire year? Once you've worked this out, you then work out the cost of how much it costs you for a full-time agent. Regardless of that being onshore or offshore, you then work out the cost to the business. So once you understand the costs to run an automatic solution, factor in support costs to maintain the solution, and then understand the long-term benefits with forecasted growth. Okay, so once we've established all those, sorry, George, do you have a question?
Yes, I did actually. I was curious because obviously you're going on about the business cases, but when is the right time to sort of get into this position where you do receive a business case, where you do start thinking about this?
Yeah, good question. I mean, just to be completely straight, if you're starting early and your systems are started, you started to set up your systems, you started to select your suppliers, you started to select your niche within the industry, as early as possible is best. Now, although in the early stages there might be a an investment that's needed, and automation will be probably more expensive in the early stages. If you're doing below, let's say 6,000 bookings per year, you're probably looking at a very similar cost to the human that is doing that task, if not slightly more expensive. Now, the thing is though, George, that those companies that are in that position where they're doing 6,000 bookings or less per year, probably the person that is making that decision is still doing some of the manual tasks. Now, can you imagine that the CEO of, let's say, Booking.com is going to be doing any type of manual processing now? No, they're not, are they? They're not going to be doing the manual process now because they've got to a point where they're busier. They've got a process that's working and they have automations in place. But back when they started, the person that started Booking.com probably did a lot of these manual processes themselves. So if you can imagine, if you are that person, you're that director of that small boutique agency starting up right now, and you had an opportunity to free yourself from that resource, which allows you to get more sales in, which allows you to effectively grow the business quicker, that is when it's justified. But going back to my business case, for those that already have humans that are doing this manual process, once you've worked out the number of actions per employee, you divide that by the number of actions needed, and that equals the number of full-time agents needed. Once you've got the number of full-time agents needed, you times that by the salary. That's your total current costs. When you've got your total current costs, you minus that by the total the cost of automation, which then equals your savings per year. But George, for those individuals that are still doing it at director level and they're doing a lot of the manual processes because they're a small boutique agency, if they have plans to grow by 10% the next 12 months, they will need to hire an administrative member of staff by the time them 12 months are up. Because if your volumes increase by 10%, that's more admin work for you and your team. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
So the positive impact of automation is obviously you increase that efficiency, your accuracy is enhanced. There's major cost savings when you get to that growth stage. So once you pass kind of 4,000 to 6,000 bookings per year, you then become more scalable. You then have time to focus on your customer experience and improve that area, which a lot of the automation that we do is focused around that. And then you've got kind of 24/7 availability because a bot doesn't eat, sleep, or go on holiday. And that's another positive thing. Imagine that all of the administrative tasks that you've always done being done whilst you're sleeping at home as a director. It makes sense. So, guys, I'm going to open up to a few questions. And like I say, those who are watching on demand or record, do get in touch to send us your questions if we haven't answered them today. But yeah, I just want to open up. Does anyone have any kind of questions at all?
I have a question.
Oh.
I was wondering, how does automation compare to, like, say, offshoring or outsourcing?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the one thing is that offshoring, the reason why it exists is because, it is lower costs to ultimately have humans doing the task. Price is sometimes very similar to automation technology, but the difference is that they're still humans doing the task. And if you've already got errors being made by humans in country or in your central office location, ultimately by offshoring it, you're still going to get those errors. Now, the difference between a robotic process automation and AI solution, it's only going to do what you've told it to do. So if I tell a bot to send a document from A to B, that's what it's going to do. It doesn't break the rules. It doesn't get lazy. It doesn't lose concentration. Whereas unfortunately, a human does. So although there might not be major differences when it comes to the costs that are saved, if customer experience and delivering for your customers accurately is important to you, then so should your view of either automation or offshoring. Does that answer your question, Jessica?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I've got a question, Joe. A bit of a two-part question, really.
Yep.
So I was talking to an OTA the other day, who I won't obviously say the name, but they mentioned that one of the biggest sort of pain areas for them was around advanced passenger information, more around the fact of it being quality checked. Excuse me, more around the fact of it being quality checked, so that obviously people aren't being refused to fly. Is there anything that Traverse has done around that area in particular?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I had a quote from someone the other day. It's amazing why anyone still travels abroad, based on what happens within travel agencies, and the pains that you know travel agencies and tour ops and OTAs all face because of information not being accurate. Now, a lot of people have automatic integrations with certain suppliers for advanced passenger information. However, it's still a human that's ultimately processing that, right? You still, making sure that the human's accurately delivered. Now you've got quality checks pre-booking. So when they're entering their advanced passenger information, not only do they have, a lot of suppliers now, like EasyJet, for example, have the technology to get them to triple check before submitting their advanced passenger information. That's not always the case for every supplier. So there are ways that you can create an advanced passenger information quality check process to ensure that your customers turn up to the airport and are allowed to fly because there wasn't one digit wrong in their passport number or their name was spelt wrong. There are ways that you can create quality checks, and especially with those companies who are doing this quality check manually, there are ways that you can triple check via automatic bots to ensure that it's authentic, it meets the requirements, and it's actually going to allow that passenger to fly. Now, there are always going to be some cases where you've got someone who's booking something in a rush and they get their information wrong. Unfortunately, if that is the case, then that is the case. That's unfortunately down to the passenger. But yes, we're doing this for some companies already, and it's working extremely effective. We've removed that manual headache, and especially for those companies that are booking directly on their website and still have to then transfer that advanced passenger information into some form of supplier portal. Who's selling on behalf of a third party is critical to get that process right. And unfortunately, humans will make errors, and we have seen it as high as 40% in this area before. So yeah, definitely something that can be looked at. Okay. Anyone have any? Do you have another question? Sorry, Jack.
Yeah. So there was, I had another question sort of off the back of that, really. So obviously, an OTA is designed to obviously removing manual processing, obviously negotiating travel arrangements. You mentioned, obviously, I just mentioned that the advanced passenger information was a bit of a pain for the business I spoke to. Where would you say is the biggest manual pain or process for OTAs in general?
There's a couple. The schedule change, flight schedule change is a big one. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter about all of these relationships that you can now get with like the likes of Ryanair on these special rates. It's still making the entire process awkward, clunky, and it's still tedious. And ultimately, you still need to sometimes update and notify the passenger of those schedule changes, which is a big pain. Can be automated, even if you're using GDS systems, which most OTAs do. And I know that some of the GDSs offer some automation, but they don't offer complete removal of manual resource. I think it reduces it from like 100% manual down to about 50. Whereas there are automatic solutions that we put into place, which will remove it from like 100% manual down to about 10% human responsibility. So, you know, the schedule change is a big one. The next big area, though, and we're seeing it a lot, customer service teams with auto allocation of tasks to respond to customer service, customer complaints, queries, and amendments. Amendments is becoming more increased the more that people are becoming more particular about their trip. So yeah, I'd say the two pains are customer response, really, so including customer services amendments all into one category, and then schedule changes, I would say, is the second biggest pain at the moment that I'm certainly seeing, and we're speaking to 3 or 4 companies a day. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
All right, any other questions? Anyone got any other questions?
Nothing from me.
Not from myself.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, yeah, like I say, if anyone does have any other questions, who are watching this on demand or record, do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you more. If you want to speak to us about something in particular that you're working on, a manual pain, a manual process, 70% of what we do is very reactive and is focused around a particular customer's pain. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed today's session, and yeah, look forward to speaking to you guys again on our next session. Thanks very much.